Now what could you possibly want with me at a time like this?
Is it true that the Phasalia family was one of the factions that started the conflict in that stained glass?
The leader of one such faction, to be exact. That was a long time ago. After their defeat, the Union was disbanded under immense pressure, and the Phasalias gradually withdrew from the public eye.
Is this why you had no choice but to publicly change your beliefs?
No. The reasons for the Phasalia family relinquishing their pride and enduring disgrace are far more intricate than that.
What do you mean?
Long ago, Turvin was actually given to the Phasalia family by the first Primus, Napoli II. When the conflict had settled, he arranged a private meeting with the head of the family to reveal the truths behind the pilgrimage. He told the Phasalias that when he traveled through the first dark tide and reached its end, there was no sanctuary, only a battlefield filled with darkness and suffering. The heavenly voices he heard were not revelations from the divinity, but the seductive whispers of the Threnodian, casting a lure for puppets to bite. As I told you before, Leviathan is a Threnodian who uses beliefs to spread a spiritual plague. You see, it requires a puppet to carry its voice. The Sentinel realized the Threnodian's plots, and thus the first Dark Tide was launched as a hasty reaping of Raguna and the Sentinel. To save Raguna from the grim fate brought by the Dark Tide, the Sentinel split a portion of their power and entrusted it to Napoli II. This power allowed him to imbue the echoes with the strength to repel the tacit discords and purify the Dark Tide.
And this power was released through the lantern depicted in the stained glass?
Yes. The other part was kept inside Turvin. It was in that very moment, when the Sentinel's power had been weakened, that the Threnodian corrupted and merged with their body, transforming the Sentinel into the form you see today.
If what you're saying is true, the first Primus should have been on Imperator's side. Did the spiritual plague you mentioned affect him?
Although the Primus's body remained whole, his soul was torn apart, caught in the ceaseless struggle between the Threnodian and the Sentinel. Within the body they now shared. The Sentinel's power failed to shield the Primus from the Threnodian's influence. As the two divinities vied for dominance, he succumbed to many misdeeds against his own people. In the end, during that private meeting, he confessed the truth to the head of the Phasalias and begged for release.
So that's why he passed so abruptly.
The Phasalia family was powerless against the Order at that time. Our only recourse was to submit to their cause and keep the secret locked away in our hearts, waiting for the right moment to act. Now what could you possibly want with me at a time like this?
You were pretty harsh on Cardathia.
Before I learned of those record secrets, I had only seen her from afar, heard tales of her accomplishments. While I would be willing to believe she stands with humanity, the more I allow myself to cling to such thoughts, the more I must strip them away and think rationally. It's only then I can be certain these thoughts are my own, and not the whispers I hear in the dark. Now what could you possibly want with me at a time like this? A trivial experiment. A test designed to find those with the strongest wills and force them into resonating with Turvin. Yet after trying for so long, all we got was the answer, the Maiden is dead.
I don't think she wants to continue this conversation. Better to stop pressing.
Now what could you possibly want with me at a time like this? Well, I don't intend to wait around either.
Are you going to search those areas we passed before alone?
The more clues, the better, don't you think? Oh, and take this. Afraid I've slipped something extra in? Or perhaps you're contemplating dinner with me.
I'm just curious why the matriarch of the Phasalia family packs her own food.
Food is always an easy target for those who find me less than pleasing.
Is there anything else you'd like to ask? I'll share with you all that I can remember. It is paradise.
I take it you don't mean that in a good way?
It is a place where sickness, hunger, sorrow, despair, and dullness of heart cease to exist. There, deacons sing eternal hymns. From a literal standpoint, this line describes the dark tide perfectly. In the beginning, the dark tide would claim only the areas it touched, assimilating all life as its vanguard to clear the way for its spread. The dead, they would grow mouths and sing hymns, day and night. They didn't need eyes or ears, for their purpose was to spread blindness and madness. Even those who did not believe were drawn irresistibly to the Leviathan's creed, and for those already deceived, it was all but inevitable. When a soul is corrupted to its core, it will sing hymns without end on its sleepless journey to merge with the dark tide. And when every faithful soul has returned to paradise, the land consumed by the dark tide will begin its pilgrimage, drawn by darkened skies, spreading its gospel to wherever it lands next. The final act of the dark tide is the journeying paradise.
Is this the future you saw after coming into contact with the dark tide?
Yes. Is there anything else you'd like to ask? I'll share with you all that I can remember. That was its name before it became a sonorosphere. This seminary, built on an island, was not just a place of learning, but also a sanctuary for raising dragon echoes.
What did they teach?
The Order's scriptures, geography, history, and combat skills.
Shouldn't a seminary focus more on cultural arts?
This was a seminary reserved only for resonators, so naturally, their talents were put to more practical use. Besides, the doctrine of salvation emphasized the importance of combat. Is there anything else you'd like to ask? I'll share with you all that I can remember. The Sword of Discord, Hogness, and the Sword of Virtue, Haltier. I can't remember anything else about Hogness, but as for Haltier, it was my former blade. How did it end up being one of the swords that can break the seal?
Perhaps we'll know once we find it.
Is there anything else you'd like to ask? I'll share with you all that I can remember. It's safer this way. You should get some rest. We'll be counting on you again tomorrow.
You mean besides being squashed behind that blue thing? Yeah, I guess. Listen, I figured something out about that frequency. It's not a single frequency. It's like it's mixed up with something else. Or kinda like a piece of cookie that's been crumbled in with everything else. Which is why it's so hard to get a good bite. To see if it was a threat. I can now say with certainty that it isn't. But since it's a crumbly mess, other than taking up space, it's pretty useless.
We might encounter something similar at the next two pedestals. Keep an eye on this for me, will you?
Will do. You can count on me, 100%.
Well, this is where our paths must part.
You're here for the Sentinel. Why would you leave now?
What I saw yesterday caught my attention. It may be tied to the Sentinel. And besides, I'd rather not spend the day twiddling my thumbs, seeing as your gondola only holds 2.
Are you sure you want to go alone?
Such concern for me. I do hope to see the fruits of your labor when I return. Mind if I take Turvin?
Go ahead. It's no use now that it's out of the pedestal. Its energy is gone.
It may still come in handy.
I'll add you in my terminal. Call me if you need help.
I just might ring you up once things are settled.